Okay, so just to get this started, let me see. So, did you have fun at the 50th high school reunion?
Oh, I certainly did. I didn't really want to go, but I'm glad I did. It was got to see a lot of people. Matter of fact, I've seen you more in the last 5 months than the last 50 years, and we were neighbors.
This is true. This is true. Well, today is Thursday, March 30th, 2023. My name is Nicole Morin Scribner. I'm a volunteer with the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center. And today we are doing this interview at the J.R. Martin Community Center in Biddeford. And I have the honor today of interviewing, okay, so I want to say Jimmy Paquette, because that's how I knew you.
Yep.
But how do most people know you?
Okay, so when people call me Jimmy, I know it's from the past, when I was younger. Jim is more, James is more like proper, you know. But yeah, Jimmy, if you have somebody say Jimmy, I know it's from the past. So, yeah.
Okay, well, let's see. How about if I just call you Jim, if that's what
fine,
most people
fine.
know you as now?
Call me whatever you'd like.
So I usually start these interviews at the very beginning by asking you what year, if you're willing to say, and where were you born?
Okay, born in Biddeford at the old Weber Hospital, January 12th, 1954. Lived on Cleeve Street in Biddeford. That's where I was, not in the house, but that's where I was born. That was my first house. And then, my parents, I don't know if, my father was born in a small community in Canada called Saint Honoré. And then my mother was born in a city called Saint Samuel. So they came to Maine, and they actually met at the Bates Corporation. It was a mill. I mean, back then everybody worked at the mill. So, and they spoke French, obviously. And then for me, I didn't speak English until I went to school, because in my household it was French, French, French. So when I got to school, I felt lost, you know. But yeah, that's kind of where it all started for me. Of course, I went to parochial schools. I went to St. Andrews, kindergarten with a woman called Simone. A lot of people might remember her. And I went there till the 6th grade. And, a lot of people talk about the Catholic, especially like the priest and stuff, a lot of bad things happen, and I'm not saying that they were perfect, but, a lot of them probably get arrested today for, slapping. But I always say, I'm so glad that I went, because they taught me morals, they taught me respect, which my parents were very big on. I'm sure, back in that generation, that's the way it was. So I don't regret going to Catholic schools. I left there in the 6th grade. I came here, Biddeford Junior High School, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Back then, the freshman class was here. And I'll never forget the first couple of days that I came here. It was totally, I honestly felt like it was a zoo. It was wild, crazy. I mean, not what I'm used to in a Catholic school, right? People telling the teachers off, and I'm like, what? What am I doing? But it took some getting used to. So, but you do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to back up a little bit and ask you to talk a little bit about your parents. So were they adults when they moved from Quebec to
I'm going to
here?
say that my father moved here when he was probably, I want to say, maybe like 10. I could be wrong. And my mother, what was weird about that is, first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about, they have, my mother's family, they had 15 kids, okay? My poor grandmother. So what happened, when they slowly came here, like two of the older sisters came, and they moved to Maine. And it was to kind of see how it was. And then another came, and another came, and then my grandfather came. They were all working at Pepperell. Matter of fact, I should have brought it. There was an article. Pepperell used to have their own magazine. And they did a story on my mother and her family, and how they were, they wish they had more families because hardworking, That's the way French people were back then. So, anyway, my father, little interesting story about his family. Paquette is a very big, family type of thing. And when they moved, there was 3 families that moved to Maine at the same time. And there was so many kids, because my father had 11 in his family. And the other families, they were like brothers, uncles, or whatever, they had a bunch of kids. It was so bad that my father told me that they actually had to put name tags on the kids, So they came over with 3 buses. And my father says to me, he said, yeah, we had, chairs hanging off the side of the bus. We had, suitcases, and it was piled up on the top. And he said, we pulled into, they moved to Middle Street here in Saco. And he said, when we pulled in, you should have seen the neighbors. They're all coming out, what the heck is this? He said, think of the Beverly Hillbillies that when they come in, that was us. And there was a lot of Greeks in the neighborhood. And they were like, who the hell are these people, So, but that's how they came. And eventually, everybody got along, and it was good. But, I can imagine that first, they see all these kids pull out of them. And there was 3 families. So, my parents got married in 51. And I was born in 54, so 3 years later.
So tell me your father's name.
My father's name is Lucian, but there's a little story behind that. When he was born, back in the day, they had, godparents, and so, but in the day, the mothers used to stay in the hospital like 3-4 days, back then. I mean, today they're out in 4 hours, But anyways, my grandmother was in the hospital, and she had the godparents go baptize, my father. So they go baptize him, and the people come back, and they said, yeah, he's all set. And my grandmother looked at the certificate, and it said Gerard Lucian Paquette. And my grandmother said, oh my God, we've already got a Gerard. They had 11 kids, right? So I can't have 2 Gerards. So they kept it that way, and they just used Lucian, his middle name, and just switched it around, But legally, his name was Gerard Lucian, but they already had a Gerard. So that's the story about that. And he was born in 1926.
So now I think I heard you say that your father, they moved into Middle Street in Saco. Did he go to school in the Saco schools?
Yes. He went to, there's another thing about that time of year, or that time of history. My father went to Burns, junior high, I guess. And back then, he only went to 8th grade. And all his brothers went to 8th grade. When they get 8th grade, their father pulled them out of school and put them to work. So my father, who was pretty big and he loved sports, and he couldn't wait to go to Thornton Academy to play sports. Well, no, he got pulled out, and they put him to work. My grandfather was a logger, so he had all his sons when they got old enough. Because listen, when you get 11 kids, you need all the money you can get. So my father would tell me, yeah, we'd work all week, And if we were lucky, my father gave me like $2. They gave him to pay. My mother, same thing. You know, they worked, gave all their pay to their parents, and they might get $1.50 for them, you know. But my mother says, hey, you know, for $1.50, you could go to a movie, you could, you know, go out to eat. So it's totally different today. But they never went to high school. My mother, because she was sickly, only made it to second grade because she was an epileptic. And she'd have seizures in school. And back then, they didn't know how to handle it. And it scared everybody when she, you know, so they said, well, we can't have her come to school. So, I know, back then, that's how it was in Canada. They said, you know, we can't have her come to school. So she went to second grade. That was it. So she was a homemaker, you know.
I don't think we mentioned her name.
Oh, Yvonne.
And her family
Yvonne
name?
Roy was her maiden name. And
so going to the second grade, was she still in Canada
still in Canada.
then?
Oh, yeah, back then. I think she came when she was probably 16, you know, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And she started working at, she went to work at Bates.
Now, when you say Bates, was there a Bates in Biddeford?
Yep. You know where the old Saco tannery is?
Yes.
Well, as you come up the hill, it was right there in the corner. So, and my mother was telling me, my father was always very shy. And she was telling me a story about, my father was a fixer. If a machine's broke, he'd go around fixing them. And one time, her machine broke down. So he went over and he's fixing it. And you know, she said, I could tell that he was, you know. And then she said, all of a sudden, you know, every day he was coming over to check my machine. You know, but she said, I could tell he wanted to ask me, but he was, you know. So she goes, after like a month of him coming over to the machine, he finally asked her out, and the rest is history. But it's funny. When I heard that story, I was, yeah, that's my father. He's very shy. Now, my father comes from a musical family. His brother, Armand Paquette, played violin. And he had a couple of brothers play guitar. My father played the stand-up bass. And they actually had a band. And they called themselves the Dixon Brothers. I don't know. You know, I asked him, why did you call yourself the Dixon Brothers? And he said, well, back then it sounded better than the Paquettes. You know what I mean? Plus, they played with Ken McKenzie. I don't know if you remember that. And they used to play like all over New England and stuff like that. So when you get out to different places, it sounded better, you know. So there was three brothers in the band that they played radio stations, POR, WIDE. So they have a program, you know, so they did pretty well. And that's kind of how I got in it because, you know, when I was really young, we'd go to church every Sunday, obviously. And when we come home, my father would grab a guitar and start playing, you know. And it was always the old country, like, your cheating heart, you know. And I used to sit there and listen to it. Everybody would sing. My mother would come over and sing, my brother. So that's kind of how it started. And for me, personally, I didn't like that old twangy country. And so what happened is, along with everybody else, when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, and I'm sure you've heard stories from famous musicians and singers that did it for them. When they saw that, they said, that's what we got to do. Because nobody had ever seen anything like it. Well, guess what? Biddeford-Saco is no different. I can't even tell you how many bands were formed or started. Not everybody, obviously, not made it famous, but I'm saying because of that, everybody all of a sudden there was bands everywhere, you know? Mm-hmm. Now for me, my first experience, I was probably 10. And now this is not really a band, but at my house we had a sun porch. And Ray Bossino, who played in local bands around here for a long time, well, he was young too. And he wanted to play drums back then. But he didn't have any drums, so he'd come over to our sun porch. I had a record player, and he brought books. You know, like the thick book would be a certain drum, and he had the sticks, and he'd play the books. And I had a guitar, and I was kind of making, you know, and my brother had a fake guitar, and we were singing along with the records, you know, that we went out and bought. But that was my first experience as far as, you know, doing something with other people. And the funniest thing is, Ray Buston was a good drawer. So the name that we decided to call it, he said, I got a name for the band, the Rat Finks. I know. So he drew a white t-shirt, this rat that was red. It said the Rat Finks, right? And he made 3 of them. So we wore them, and we went, I'll never forget, we went down to the Midnight Madness on a Friday night. Everybody's looking at us, what the heck is these guys, you know? And I was proud, you know, I felt it's my first, you know. But it's funny, that was the first band I was in. It's not really a band, but. And then, you know, of course, the first official band that I was in I was probably 12. And the first guys who were in the band with me was Phil Gervais, Rick Bennett, Mike Lowell, and I think Steve Whalen. I could be wrong with this, but vaguely I remember him playing guitar. We used to practice in Phil Gervais' garage. And of course, you know, the neighbors used to complain because of the noise. So, but that was the first experience, and we weren't very good, let me tell you. You get a term garage band, that was us. But, you know, you practice, you get a little bit better, and people used to come and, you know, sit and listen. But then the cops used to come over all the time. So then we'd have to, in the summertime, we'd have to shut the door, and you're sweating because it's hot. So at one point, I decided that, you know what, I'm tired of the cops coming here. We gotta, what can we do? You know, where are we gonna practice? So finally, I was so fed up that I said, you know what, I'm gonna go see the mayor. Now think about it. Like, the mayor's gonna see me, you know.
How old were you at the time?
I think I was like, I don't know, 15 maybe. But I just got tired of, every time we tried to practice, then we go to somebody else's house, it was the same thing. And I understand, trust me. So I walked into freaking City Hall, and I said, I want to see the mayor. I don't know, I didn't even think, like, you know, what I really was going to do there, or if he'd see me at all. Next thing I know, come with me. And he actually took the time. I went in his office. He says, how can I help you, young man? So I told him the story. I said, look, you know, this is what's happening. And we don't want to bother people, but we're just a bunch of guys that we want to just play music. We're not we're not getting in trouble, you know. And I said, but we need a place. I said, do you have any ideas? And he said, you know what? Hang on a minute. And he left the room for about 5 minutes. He came back in. He says, I got a place for you. He says, how about City Hall? I said, what? Because at the time, City Hall was not being used. And he goes, yeah, here's the key. Just, you know, take it easy in there. And we had City Hall. Can you imagine that?
Do you mean Hall, like where City Theater is?
Well, yeah, City Theater. I'm sorry, yeah. City
Yeah.
Hall, City Theater is where we let us. You can use the City Theater. Okay. So next thing I know, now, he, of course, wanted to get probably some credit for this. So next thing I know, the Portland Press Herald wants to do pictures with us, interview with us at the City Theater. we didn't. So I know that he probably, or somebody, you know, but I don't care. He was nice enough to, you know.
And which mayor was this?
Gilbert Bushy. Gil. And a lot of, you have to admit, a lot of mayors would have said, you know, they don't want to bother, but he was nice. I mean, he gave us a break, and we were able to rehearse, and we got a little bit better. And our first gig, I'm going to go back a little bit. I was 12 years old, and it was at Fremont Club. I don't know if you remember that place. Okay. So the guys I was telling you, Phil Gervais, Rick Burnett, me, Mike Lowell, and this girl, whenever we rehearsed, she used to come over. She was like 10. Her name was Gail Damaris. Cute girl. And her mother was like, she'd come once in a while too. But anyways, I think the mother said, I can get you guys to play at the Fremont Club. So, yeah. Of course, we're not going to get paid. That's all right. And she said, well, I'm going to make some costumes for you. So I didn't know what to expect. So she comes out, and she made us vests with gold glittering stuff on it, right? And we all had to wear black pants and black shoes. And I'm like, you know, it looked dumb. But we all wore them. And then she made a special costume for her daughter. Her daughter had a gold thing with a little short kind of thing, mini dress, I guess, white boots. And she was going to be our little go-go dancer. Okay? So we're playing. And we noticed she was getting all the applause, you know. It's like, because she was dancing around, and she was cute, young kid. And she would take a break sometimes. And then when she came back, hey, everybody's clapping. And I go, wow. So it was funny that would happen. But we played a lot of places locally, you know, as we went on. So many weddings, oh my God. Matter of fact, who was like, I run into people all the time. Hey, you played my wedding. They know me. Hey, Jim, how you doing? And hey, how you doing? And I really trying to remember who I'm. And they say, yeah, you played at my wedding. And I go, so I always say the same thing. So are you guys still together? Well, no, you know. And I always say, well, geez, we must have had a bad day that day, you know. But played a lot of weddings. And I don't even know if they have these anymore. A lot of prenuptials. Do they still do that today? I don't know. But they were big back in the day. I had one, and you can make some serious money. You know, I mean, back then, $400 or $500 would help you. So we played a lot of times. Who was I talking to? Was that French-speaking thing I started? I met Leo Simino. And he said, hey, Jim, remember me? And I go, I didn't really. He said, yeah, you played my wedding and my prenuptial. Okay. So that happens a lot. So weddings kept us busy. And back then, I heard your interview with Toots Boutot. And he said there was no deposits and stuff. He's absolutely right. It was, you know, not even a shake hand. Sometimes it'd be over the phone. Somebody would call, hey, you guys busy? All right, I want you to play my wedding. They agree on a price, that was it. We'd show up, you know, and they pay us. And it was all cash, which that changed over the years. But it was like, it's kind of like, you know, the credit unions back in the day. I can remember my father going in at St. Andrew's Credit Union, was on Pool Street. And he, you know, everybody knew him. And he go in for a loan, and he didn't even fill out really any paper. But what was his name? Saint Amand was the guy that was the officer there. Shake my father's hand, okay, and that was it. You know, it was more of a personal. That's how it was back then with the bands. I don't know how it is now. But I'm going to say the high points for bands around here, I'm going to say started after, like I said, after the Beatles, 64 to probably mid 80s, then it started to, DJs started to come out, and they stole a lot of, like, weddings. I mean, when you're charging, $500 to do a wedding, and a DJ says, I'll do it for 100, and I understood that. So, but we played a lot of different Battle of the Bands. I mean, we played and there was a lot of places to play, Nick. There was, I'm sure you remember a lot of them. Back in the day, I don't even know if they still do it, Biddeford High School used to have dances. Like they had the fireman's ball. They had the policeman's ball. And then, a lot of them were for charity, but they'd have different events. Of course, back then it was BYOB. But we used to play a lot at St. Joseph's Parish Hall. That place was the place to go. I can't tell you how many times we played there. St. Jean's, of course that's no longer. St. John's upstairs. Didn't play there too many times because climbing up to the second floor wasn't easy with that equipment, And that's another thing that's changed over the years. Like my father, when he was in a band, it was all like an acoustic guitar, and they put it in the trunk, and my father had this big bass, they strap it to the roof. They could all travel in one car. My time, the bigger your amplifiers were, the more impressive it was. I can remember we'd go see bands, and we haven't even heard them play yet. Wow, look at the amplifiers. Wow, that's awesome. And in your mind, you're already thinking, these guys got to be good, So the bigger, the better. And today, it's a totally different. They make little small amplifiers that put out the sound that, we used to have. But I was dedicated. I really thought I wanted to be a rock star. And so much so that I remember my father and my mother, I got my license when I was 16. And I was in a band. And, when you're a guy, 16, you get your license in a car, you're in heaven, right? So my parents said to me, well, we can help you. When I was in a band, I wanted a new PA system. I really need that. So they said, we'll give you a choice. We can help you buy a car, or we'll help you buy a PA system. I said, PA system. That's how important it was to me. And I figured, well, I got enough guy friends to pick me up, So, but then it was funny because my father played country. I didn't like that. So I grew up playing rock and roll, top 40 stuff. And then my daughter, Jenny, she went back to country. So it's like a circle, and my daughter, not because she's my daughter, but I mean, my father was in the music business. He did pretty well. I feel I did pretty well. But my daughter, I mean, she did a lot better than us. I mean, my daughter performed with like Willie Nelson, Alabama, Keith Urban, Brad Paisley. And I got to meet a lot of these people because of her. So it was good. I think she played around here a few times, but I got to go to New York, big outdoor concert. She performed with Willie Nelson. I mean, it was great. So she did well. One thing leads to another. So, but my other two kids, they weren't, they were supportive, but they were into different things. Jamie, my daughter Jamie now owns a daycare school. She has like 70 kids. And my son is a manager he's a district manager for Dunkin' Donuts. So I'm pretty proud of them. They're all, you look back and say, geez, we did okay, We taught them, it never caused me any problems, so that's always a good thing. But the band thing is like, we got done probably, we played a lot of different places. We were busy every week. I remember we had an agent that wanted to take over our bookings. And he said, I can get you guys to play. And I remember we said, well, we're busy twice a week. Why do we need an agent? So we never did. Now, I think back on that, the good thing with an agent, he wanted to book us like Portland and, out further, which wouldn't have been a bad thing. But, we were busy here, so we said, nah, we'll stick to what we got.
So tell me the story about how you came up with the name for your band.
Well, interesting. The first name was Black Hart with Heart. That's how we spelled it. And the black part, you're trying to be cool, you're trying to be kind of rocky, and then after a while, we said, Hart, Heart. That still sounds a little pansy-ish, We want it to be more rough, So we said, well, let's try this, and we like the the sound of it. So we said Hart, so we still got Hart. And then what happened was a couple of guys in the band left, and we had just changed the name. So I went down and registered the name, Hart, just in case. But that's how the name got around, and like I said, the heart. We looked it up to try and find out what it was, and surprisingly, it was something. It was a buck, with antlers. So we kept the name, and it's been like that forever. No, it was a fun time of my life. I really think back and I go, I miss that feeling. It's hard to explain, Nick. It's when you're on stage, and like I was a singer, obviously, and when you're on stage and you're singing or you're performing, you turn into a different person. I used to get people, where I worked or whatever, they come and see us play, and they'd say, I can't believe that was you, because you're all so, shy, and here you are up there, and you're going, I said, well, something comes over you. You're like a different person, and, when you rehearse a song, and you're playing it for the first time especially, and it comes out really good, it's a feeling like, I can't explain it to you. It's a feeling like you're, I don't know, it's like you become a different person. And there's nothing like, I'm sure you can relate, music or songs give you, there's nothing else that can give you as much passion and emotion, and it's all good. I tell people all the time, try singing a song and be sad. If you start singing, you're going to feel, you know what I mean? So it's always been important in my life. It still is today. I'm into music just as much. And it's funny how my tastes have changed over the years. I'm sure yours has too. For an example, I can remember in the 70s, remember the Carpenters? I was like, these guys, this is terrible. This is like, bubblegum stuff. And then over the last few years, I said, oh my God, what was I thinking? Karen Carpenter is awesome, I'm listening to stuff that I would never even think of listening to. I'm listening to opera. So, things change, you adapt. And I was always very dismissive, and because we don't know any better. As we get older, we get a little wiser. So,
when you were were you playing a lot when you were in high school too?
Yes. I played in bands here and there, since 12 years old. But what really started it off, at junior in high school, I took vocational school, auto body, with Mr. Clyde Higgins. Loved the man. And one of my classmates was Norman Cantrell. And I knew he played guitar. So we started talking because we were in the same class, and next thing I know, I said, come on, let's start something. So the main band that I would say for most of the years that I played, at the time we were the most popular, Norm Cantor, Rick Burnett was still with us, was still with me. Steve LaBelle, he was in another band at the time called Crystal Cabbage. And I knew he played drums, but I always tell people, you never believe where I met Steve LaBelle. And I met him at church. You know how people would stand in the back? That was me, right? I'd stand in the back, look, doing this, and next thing I know, Steve LaBelle's across from me. He's leaning on the other door. And one thing led to another. We were talking. Like, he knew I was in a band, and I knew he was. Next thing I know, I said, well, look, we're looking for, yep, he come in. And then Mike LaBelle played keyboards. And we had a guy by the name of Timmy Miles. He lived in Sanford. But that was the core of the band, I think, when we were at Prime. That group of guys stayed together for quite a while. And, you become like a family. We rehearsed on Wednesday nights. And because you start having kids, and everybody knew each other's wives, and sometimes a lot of times we'd get together at somebody's house, just play cards, or So you become very close knit, and it's difficult. Like the wives, we're all married with kids, and you're rehearsing once a week, you're playing twice a week. It's not easy on a wife to be home. They used to come out on Saturday nights. It's funny, we had a table that was always called, that's the band wife table, We had to make sure wherever we played, we told whoever's paying us, we need a band table for the wives. But they didn't come to all of them because they couldn't. So I imagine, I put myself in, their shoes. How would I feel if my wife, especially in that atmosphere, I don't know. I might have been, a little, I don't know if I could have done it, to be honest with you, but thank God, I'm not saying they loved it, but my wife never told me I had to stop, so I give her credit for that. And I was away from the kids for a while, for a long time, and then how the band ended, I think it was 82 or 83. We had been playing. We started playing this club up in Rochester, New Hampshire. It's called the Victory Club. And we played there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, right? And we did that for quite a while. And then it was like June. And we said, you know what? Why don't we take a break for the summer? We had never taken a break all these years. And we all had little kids, and we all, that might be good. Let's, I'm sure the wives would appreciate it. So we decided to take the summer off. And that was like 1983. That summer's still going on. We never got back together. Some of the guys kept playing different places, but not as Black Hart band anymore. So, and the next time we played was at that reunion. And then La Cremesse asked us in 2000 to come back, and that was kind of nice, is because my daughter was going to play at La Cremesse. And so they wanted like us to get back together, and then my daughter was going to play after us. Now my daughter's band had, my brother was in her band, and my cousin Scott Paquette was in her band. So there was 3 Paquettes in that band, and then me. So it was a good night, except for we played the block party. My daughter played there. We started first, and it looked like it was going to rain. So we played matter of fact, if you go on YouTube, you'll see it. It says 2000 reunion. We played the block party, then my daughter played after us. And then we were going to do it again on Sunday. Same deal. We go on first. My daughter would go on second. Well, they switched it around on us. They decided they're going to put Jenny on first. Okay. Well, then, for us, we get up there, I think we played 2 songs. And all of a sudden, I see this fireman coming over, waving his hands. Get off the stage, we're done, right? I'm like, what the heck? Well, apparently, they got word that there was this big thunderstorm coming in with a lot of wind and rain, and they didn't want anybody to get. So, now the thing is with us is we hadn't rehearsed. Our drummer, Steve LaBelle, moved to Indiana. And so the rest of us would rehearse a little bit without him. But he came over like 3 days before the Lacrimas, and I think we rehearsed once with him. So we put a lot of work into it, and we played like 2 songs. And a lot of people were there, and they wanted us to keep playing. And whoever it was got a little upset, and I understand. I said, no, we got to go. So that was kind of it for that. But it was good years, met some nice people, and there were a lot of bands. On a Saturday night, because bands back then, we used to play till 1 o'clock. Do you remember? Now I don't even know what time. A lot of places close at 11 now. So, but we all, at 2 o'clock, we'd be at Rapid Race. And there'd be, all of a sudden there'd be another band that would come in, and another band would come in, and, hey, where'd you guys play tonight? Oh, we played at St. Joe's, or we played at St. Jean's. So there was a lot of places to play. There was a lot of bands. It was a great time.
One of the things that I do in preparation for these interviews is I've got access to a program called newspaperarchives.com, so I was able to go and do some research, and I saw all the ads and the places where you were playing, and a couple of things that I thought that were a little bit different, and I wondered if you could explain it. They had notices on there that said things like, due to overcrowding, we're going to limit the attendance. So it must be that these dance halls were really, people really went to.
Yes,
very popular.
I'm not bragging, but whenever we played in the area, maybe that's why we were busy, because people knew that, it was always going to be a good crowd. And like I said, at our reunion at the ice arena, we kept saying, no, who's going to show up, after all these years. And it was a packed. There was 1,500 people showed up. As a matter of fact, even after all those years, I looked out from behind the curtain in the back, and then we all started getting nervous, like, oh my God, you see all the people out there? And it was great. So yeah, a lot of the places, one of the places we played, and it was a fun place, it was called Country Pines. I don't know if you remember that, right? That was a BYOB. Dale Blow owned that. And we were very fortunate because, he had us play there at least twice a month. And he liked us. Because we brought a lot of people to his place, but he let us rehearse at that facility. And believe it or not, he had a tennis court in this big place. We go there, we have a key, and then we play some tennis, and we rehearse. So, but that place would be packed, and people had fun. People would dance, and BYOB, of course. I don't remember any trouble or all the years that I played. I can't sit here and tell you, I remember we had a big fight. None of that.
I was going to ask you about that, if there were any, were there any really challenging times like that?
No, I don't remember anything like that ever happening. And I'm going to tell you, I owned a nightclub, and we had a few of those, So I just think it's people who were brought up different. People just wanted to have fun. I'm sure you remember they bring in their coolers, right?
Well, that was the other thing that you don't typically see, because I saw there were a couple of other things I saw in the ads. One of them is it said that it was like couples only.
There was a couple of places that we played that they trying to cut down on the. That's how they try to avoid problems. Because if a lot of single people go in there, one thing leads to another, or this guy's looking at this guy's wife or whatever. It never really happened, but I think that was one of the ways. Some of the places would do Friday night was singles night, then Saturday night was couples night.
I see.
So,
and then the other thing that I saw was a bump contest.
A what?
A bump contest.
A bump.
I thought maybe it had something to do with in the 70s where doing the bump was, like the dance craze at the time.
No, I think I don't. That doesn't ring a bell with me. But they might have, maybe I knew it as a different name. I don't know.
Yeah, because I that's what it said on the ad was the bump contest.
Yeah,
I'm like, I got to ask Jim about that.
I mean, the only thing I can remember is they'd have different contests. Like, what was that? The one you go into the bar.
Oh, yeah.
What is that? How can I not forget that? How would I forget? Limbo. The limbo, whatever it was. So, they'd have a few of those. But I can't remember.
Were there, I know you did a lot of, like, holidays, like Halloween or Valentine's Day or whatever. Are there any of those that were, like, your favorite in terms of the types of events?
Valentine's was always good. The key things with the holidays, if a holiday came on like a Wednesday, but boy, if St. Patrick's Day or if anything fell like on a Friday or Saturday, it was usually packed. And the other thing too, I must say, and I talked about this, the mayor's ball, the fireman's ball was always packed. And now, when I was in school, my hair was longer. And, back in the day, the teachers, they'd make fun of me. Or guys that were in bands. It's not the same as it is today, okay? Like I had one teacher, I'm not going to say who his name is, but I'm sure you know him. He used to call me Goldilocks. Hey, Goldilocks, you sing last night? Stuff like that. This was in front of everybody. And then I had another teacher who would pick up something, hey, Paquette, and make believe he was singing, right? And I remember he got me so mad one day. I said to him, someday you're going to come pay to see me. And he laughed. Well, guess what? One day, we played for the Biddeford Athletic Association. And there he was. Now, I could have went over and I just said, hey, thank you very much for coming. It's good to see you. I hope you have a good time. And he just kind of looked at me, but he knew what I was saying. But and that's the other thing. Like my parents, there was no support really. My father, you know how hard it is to make it, which it is. Don't put all your eggs in the basket. You hear that. Now the difference was like when my daughter decided to do this, she was accepted to go to Farmington. She wanted to be a teacher, and she was getting ready to start go to college. And somebody said, Jen, you should enter this contest that they put on. So she said, all right, she tried it. And this was for the York County Championship. And it was, so there was a bunch of people from York County. And she ended up winning that. And then from there, we went to Portland. And this was going on. It was like one big thing. And she won over there. Next thing I know, we're going to Wheeling, West Virginia. And there's a bunch of people that were having a contest there. And if you ended up winning there, you went to Las Vegas for the national. So here we are, Wheeling, West Virginia. And she won there. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So we go to Las Vegas. Now, this is a national championship. Every state has a representative. Now, we're sitting there going, look, we're just happy to be here, you know. And she wins the national championship. So now she's sitting there going, do I really want to go to college? You know? So I remember her mother and I sat her down and we said, look, you know, if you want to do this, we'll support you 100%, but you got to give it all you got. You know, this is going to be like a job for you. You know, if this is what you want to do. Well, I guess what I'm getting at the difference is we supported her as parents. You know, when you get support, it helps you. Like my parents, I don't think they knew, you know. They just, you know, don't put all your eggs in a basket, you know. And I'm not saying they were wrong, because you're right. I mean, if it was easy, everybody'd be up there singing. But it's not, my daughter ended up living in Nashville for 2 years. And she got a taste of the business side of it, which she didn't like too much. A lot of two-faced people, and but support was so important. Like I said, the teachers, you know. I'm sure it might be different today, or you know, because you hear stories about a teacher taking a kid, you know, and helping. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I needed to help, but when you kind of make fun of people, it kind of like, what am I doing? You know, so you don't feel the same way. But I just did it because I loved it. You know, I didn't do it for the money because we didn't make any money. It was a lot of work, but it's something that's inside you that you love.
Did your parents ever go to any of your shows?
My parents went a lot.
Uh-huh.
And my mother, she'd be playing, like she'd come to like St. Joseph's Parish Hall. We'd be playing, and she's on stage, and I'd bend over. Jimmy, c'est trop fort. On peut pas parler. So it's too loud. You know, can't you turn it down? I go, okay, Mom. So I'd go over and make believe I turned it, but I never did. But, oh yeah, it was always too loud. And when they always showed up, I'd say, oh no, here we go. Because sometimes she'd bring aunts and uncles, you know. And they were, but I got to tell you, now I kind of understand, because I remember maybe a few years back, we went to a nightclub down the beach with some friends to hear this band. I'm like, holy mackerel. We ended up leaving because I couldn't talk to anybody. I said, I just turned into my father and mother. Oh my God. But yeah, no, it's amazing how that works. So yeah, they used to go all the time when they could. So, and it helped that my father was a musician, you know. So it was good. The other thing I did, I was involved in local sports. Like I played softball. Matter of fact, I told you about Dale Blow, who owned, well, he sponsored our softball team called the Blow Brothers. And it was fun. We played a lot of tournaments, got to meet some people, local guys, you know, it was fun.
Now, I saw that when you were younger, too, Little League was something that you were...
We played at the Cary Little League, and that was on Poole Street, if I remember correctly. Not there anymore. But I think that belonged, it was associated with St. Andrew's School. Because there was the Cary Little League, there was West Biddeford Little League, East Biddeford Little League. I mean, there was a lot of different places. So it was fun. I mean, now back then, today everybody makes the team, okay? But think about this, you're 9 years old. I'll never forget this. There's tryouts, because not everybody makes it, okay? So I didn't have a glove. Now my father said, well, you can use mine. Okay, now you got to remember the old gloves had like 3 fingers, and you know it wasn't even like it was like a flat thing. I'm like, he said, well, if you make it, I'll buy you a glove. I had to put like sponge inside the thing because it's so thin it hurt. But anyways, what they do back then is you try out, right? And then they'll say, all right, look for Wednesday's paper in the Journal Tribune. It'll tell you if you made it and what team you're on. Let me tell you, when you're 9 years old, you can't wait for that paper to come out, but yet, you know, if you don't see your name, you're bummed. So I was lucky I saw my name, and I played for Rays AG, which was Rays Market. Back then it was Rays AG. Some of my teammates, Reynold Ayotte was on my team. Guy Boutot, I don't know if you remember him, he was on my team. David Levine. So a lot of guys that I went to school with. But those were fun days. Our coach was Paul Gagno. And he was good. He used to pick us all up. Always, at the end of the game, he'd buy us a soda. And then when we had practice, he would bring us all to Dairy Joy. And we, you know what I mean? He didn't have to do that, but he did. He was a good guy. So that was a lot of fun.
And then I saw that bowling was your thing,
Loved
too.
bowling. Loved it. And I got to be pretty good at it. Not bragging about that, but I got to be pretty good. I bowled for the high school. It was me and Richard Booton. I can't remember the other guys, but we're all in high school. Actually, I started bowling when I went to St. Andrews. I think 3rd grade. They had a bowling league, and around the corner, it was Pastime Bowling Lanes. It was right there on Lower Main Street. And so after school, we just walked down. And I remember my father used to give me $1. So at one point, I could buy chips and a soda, you know, and I was like, oh boy. But that's how it started. And then in high school, I kept it going. And then after I got out of school, I just kept it going. Got in a lot of tournaments, and I got to be pretty good at it. I was in a lot of bowling leagues. And yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Speaking
now
of,
there's no more bowling alleys, Nick.
I was going to say, yeah, I know that's changed quite a bit. When you were talking about high school, that reminded me, I wanted to ask you, so you went to Biddeford High.
Yes.
So how did you feel, or how do you remember what it was like when St. Louis closed?
Oh, yes.
So tell me what your thoughts about that was.
Now you got to remember that St. Louis and Biddeford, that was like big time problems. You know, Thornton Academy was there too, but it wasn't like Biddeford, St. Louis. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking, there's Andy Drapo. You know, I'm looking at all these guys that you hated, right? Now, I hate's a strong word, but you know what I mean. And it was funny because it didn't take long. Everybody kind of merged in together. And of course, because of the sports, everybody kind of got intertwined. And of course, it helped that they were, you know, we had good teams, as you remember. So everybody became more like, when you're a teammate, it's different, you know. But for a little while there, I remember it was a little hairy. Oh, definitely. But it turned out all well. And of course, today, another thing that's changed, I can't believe, like Biddeford High School is like Class B, right? I mean, back when we were in school, there was Class A. If there'd be a Class AA, we would have been there, you know? And we always had good teams. Now, you know, I know it's population, I think, right? And I go, well, how can that be? Did the population go down? I actually looked it up. It didn't. It's gone up. I'm like, well, so what happened? There's not enough kids going to school, or, you know, I don't know. Bigger families back in the day, you know? It's just kind of, it was hard.
Now, one of the things about about St. Louis closing and on fairly short notice is we had to go double sessions.
Yes.
Where they split the school in two, and everybody, let's see, juniors and seniors went in the morning, and freshmen and sophomore went in the afternoon. So how did that affect you?
We went in the mornings. It was nice in a way. I mean, we had the afternoon off. But it seemed like you got more crammed in less hours. You know what I mean? So But other than that, that didn't last that long, though, did it? I don't remember.
Well,
Double sessions.
for us, it ended up being, well, I think that because St. Louis closed in 70, so for us it would have been for the 2 years, I think. I can't remember if it was for the 2 years or for just one.
Okay, because, so you're saying that when you got there, did you,
It was in double sessions.
until you graduated?
I think so.
I don't know. I don't remember that. I remember 1 year.
Maybe it was just the first year. That's
That would have
what
been,
left.
so you
most
got there
of
in
an
71 is when you started?
Yeah,
Or was it your junior year?
junior year. Yeah, was double sessions.
So how
But
did you
you're
feel
right.
about it?
Not my interview, but you're right. It was a challenge, but it did allow us to work in the afternoon. But if you had a late night the night before,
Yes.
it was pretty early the next
Yeah.
morning.
No, we were in the morning, so we obviously used to it.
But I mean, I was thinking, especially if, let's see, back then as a junior, were you playing in a band?
Oh, yeah,
Were you
yeah.
up late, and did that?
Well, we didn't play. We played Fridays and Saturday nights. So
Okay.
there were weekends where I would play Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday afternoon we'd play a wedding, and then we'd play Saturday night. Let me tell you, that's a lot of moving equipment. It was, today people can move equipment in a car. We had a big van, and it's funny now that I think about it. We had helpers, Norm Fector and Donald Genrin. Those were our buddies. And they just like hanging around with us, and they helped us move equipment. And you're talking about two big guys. And they were there if there was any, they made sure that nobody did anything to us. Or they're like, roadies. But they enjoyed it, they had fun, and it was good.
Now, by the time you got to your third performance in 2 days, was it kind of hard to keep up that same level of energy and enthusiasm?
It depends. Now, for me personally, singing, after going into the third that time, I did a lot of honey and lemon. I mean, I used to heat up lemon juice and pour some honey in it and gargle, and it helped. But, depends where we played. Now, I'll give you an example. A wedding, we all didn't really like it. I was the MC. So I had to get everybody, I had to go out back and get everybody lined up, right? Okay. And, they're all talking, and I'm like, come on, guys, we got to get going. And then you line them up the way it was given to me, right? So then I'd get back up there, and you introduce everybody. Well, one time, I was introducing, and then I got to the end, and I go, okay, everybody, pick up your glass. We're going to give a toast. And somebody yelled out, hey, what about the bride and groom? I forgot to introduce of all people to forget, right? Oh, yeah, no, so I said, I was just seeing if you were paying attention. Got out of that one good. But I totally forgot the bride and groom. So, and there was a lot to try to remember. I don't know how they do weddings today, but back then there was like a dollar dance and the garter, right? And then there was a bride and groom dance, and the mother, Daddy's Little Girl, that song, I think I sang that so many times. You're the end of the rainbow. Oh. So we didn't like those much. Number one, because the people that were there weren't there because of us. They could care less. They were there for the wedding, and I understand that. And then there was we had wedding material songs that we didn't play anyplace else. Like, what's it called, the Greek song? We played stuff like that, which we never play anyplace. Daddy's Little Girl, and so it was stuff that we didn't like playing, but we did it. But then you go to a place like, say, Country Pines on a Saturday night. Now the place is packed, and they're there for us, because, you know, why else would they be there? So now, and then we had certain songs that we played that we liked, you know, like more rocking songs. You could play a little louder. Because weddings, you had to, you know, keep it down. So we were able to be more ourselves, and the crowd, you know, they get you into it. You know, if you ever, I used to tell people all the time, you know, owning a club, one of the reasons I did that was because I used to have friends still playing in bands. I'd go see them. And I said, you know what? If I started my own club, they can come to me, right? And that's what happened. So the difference is a lot of the bands, back then, we worked hard trying to get the crowd involved. I don't know if you ever came to any of our stuff, but we had certain songs that, for an example, that song Love Train, people would grab each other like a train and they'd go all the way around and have a ball. And then we have another song, Beautiful Sunday, where everybody went, you know, this, and that was great. And when I owned the club, I'd see bands. They would barely talk to the crowd. They'd play, and some of them were pretty good. And then they'd get upset and say, we can't get the crowd going. What kind of crowd's over here? I said, guys, it's not them. You got to earn that. So we did a good job with that. People, I think that most people had a good time. And sometimes, you know, you do things and you don't even think about it. You know, I wonder if people appreciated us or anything, but it's funny because every once in a while I'll see something on Facebook and somebody will bring up about our band, like there's a page, I guess, you know, you're from Biddeford, and then I'll read all the comments, and thank God they're all very good, you know, and you sit there and you go, geez, I guess they did really, you know what I mean? It's a good feeling to know. So it makes you feel like it was worth, you know, people did have a good time. So, yeah, it was fun.
What was your favorite song or songs that you used to like to do?
Well, there was a couple of them that I personally, well, okay, first of all, you have to understand, they had a nickname for me. The band did. I was known as the Boomer because I had a loud, strong, powerful voice. And sometimes I would, you know, if I had to watch it, because sometimes I'd drown those guys out, you know. But I liked singing like the ballads, you know. And now I got to tell you, when I first started, I played guitar when I was like 12 or 13. We played, I was in 7th grade here. And they asked us to play for the junior high dance, okay? So I'm playing guitar. We walk in, first of all, we walk in Mr. Radin. I don't know if you remember him. No, you weren't here. So he was like he's a teacher here, but he was a chaperone for that night. So we bring in our equipment. We're setting up. There's no stage, but we're setting up in the corner. Now, we're playing for nothing, okay? So Mr. Radin comes around and says, okay, guys, I got to have $1 a piece. We're like, what? He made us pay $1 because that's what they were charging at the door, right? I said, we're playing for free as it is. No, it doesn't matter. So I'll never forget, we had to pay to play. But anyways, I'm playing guitar, and I'm singing this song, and then I put the guitar down because there was a song that I would sing by myself, and it was kind of a slow love type of song. So I'm singing this song, and I'm looking out, and I see these girls, and I'm like, they really seem like they liked it, right? And they're looking at me and smiling, and I said, you know, this singing stuff's all right. So next thing I know, I was putting the guitar down 2 songs a night, 3 songs a night. Next thing I know, I said, I'm just going to sing. But that's kind of how it started. I noticed that the singer got a lot more, you know what I mean? So it was good. That's how I did it.
So did you, you talked about, I'm guessing that you probably didn't take any other jobs when you were like in high school, because this is what you were doing for work, is playing for the bands. And then you talked about opening your own club. Now, did you work other than
Yes,
that outside?
I was in the automobile business. I was a car salesman, and then I became a sales manager. And I did that for like 25 years, I guess. And then what happened was in 2002, I got diagnosed with cancer. And I had a sarcoma in my leg. And I ended up at Mass General. And it didn't look good. I was given like a 10% chance. They told me that 90% of the people that have what I have die. Get my affairs in order, right? I mean, that was kind of scary. And so I went onto so we're going to put you under these heavy treatments. So I had radiation. I travel to Boston for radiation 7 days in a row. So you drive up there, it takes like maybe half an hour, radiation, then you go home. They give me 2 weeks off, and then I'd go back in for chemo. Now, a lot of people they go like outpatient, they do a chemo and then they go home. Not me, I was there 7 days straight, and they had me hooked up 24 hours a day. It was a very aggressive, they figured they're gonna try this. So anyways, what happens is, obviously, I'm here. But I remember I was home, and they told me that if you ever get a temperature of 100, you call us, because now that's not good, because all your white blood count is gone, right? So next thing I know, I'm feeling well. It was 101. Next thing I know, for going to Mass General, I get there and they put me in this bubble thing. And I'm like, okay. And that's when they said to me, you better get your affairs in order. I had an infection, it wasn't going good. Anyway, so I talked to the man upstairs. I'm not a religious man, but when you're like that, you think about things. Now, when I was going through it, I found out that Biddeford did not have any support groups at all. So I had to go to South Portland. You just feel like you got to talk to somebody, So when I'm laying there, I said, I'll make you a promise. I said, you get me through this, and I give you my word that when I get back home, I'm going to start a support group for people in the area. So, and I remember reading, there was at the time, this newspaper, Biddeford Journal, said there was 374 people that year that got diagnosed with cancer. And I'm going, where are these people going? So, obviously I lived, and I ended up, thank God, I fulfilled my promise. I got involved with the hospital. I went to talk to everybody, and I got a lot of red tape from people like, at the hospital. So I said, you know what? I'm all done with this. So, they basically jerking me around with this. So I went to the Courier, and I said, this is the story. And next thing I know, they did a story on me. I'm on the front page, I'm sitting there with a cane, and they told the story about how I was trying and how I wasn't getting anywhere. Well, guess what? Next thing I know, I'm getting calls because they saw it. And the reporters went to the hospital and said, is it true you guys don't have a support group here? So that's how it got started. Now, they called me up. I went down, sat with them, and everything was going to be okay. They just bought Bulldog Funeral Home. I don't know if you remember that. Or it got donated to them. So they were going to do the support group there, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We're going to have a support group at a funeral home? Well, we're going to redesign it. All right, so they asked me to kind of be like a facilitator. I'd go in every once in a while because I went through the support group. I've been through the cancer. So if somebody had questions, they could ask me. So I did that for probably 6 months, and then I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I was just getting over it myself. And you go there, and that's all. It was continually talking about cancer. And I'd see people, next minute they're gone, I said, I got to get away. So now I couldn't work. I was disabled for a while. So, but at the time, it's still like this today. You try to collect disability, they make you wait. And I had doctor's notes from specialists in Portland saying I couldn't walk. I couldn't work right now. So, but I still got turned down. And I tried again. You're allowed 3 times. I tried again. They turned me down again. So then I said, I'm going to get a lawyer. So I got a lawyer. And the 3rd time, I got approved. And I remember telling the lawyer, I go, why didn't they just do this up front? He goes, Jim, they turn everybody down. Maybe twice. They just don't want to hand over money, In other words, so they make you work for it? That's not fair. So the funny story about this is, it took a while. I'm going to say 6 months later, I'm still not working. See, the other thing that people don't think about is financially, I couldn't work. My credit went down the tubes. I was living on assisted living with City of Saco was paying my rent. I wasn't used to that. So the financial, I'd get calls from creditors or whatever and saying, well, can't you give us $10? And I go, what you don't understand? I'm not making any money at all right now. Give me some time to get back on my feet. So anyway, one day I had like $20 and I go, man, I got to go to the bank. I got to go to credit union and deposit this because I made out a check, right? So I go deposit $20 and I leave there and I'm looking at my receipt, right? It's like $13,000 something $100. I'm like, what the heck is this? These people made a mistake. And I'm like, I'm happy, right? I'm thinking, Jesus, I need this money. But then I'm driving home and I'm going, no, it's not mine. So I went back to the credit union. And I said, somebody made a mistake because I don't have $13,000. Next thing I know, the manager's coming over. They're all looking. And come to find out, Social Security came through and they direct deposited it into my account. I didn't know. So it turns out that the money was mine, after all. But, so I took that money and I said, okay, what am I going to do with this? I was kind of burnt out on car business. It had changed over the years. So I said, what do I want to do with my life? So I took some of that money and I started my own nightclub, and I did that for 10 years.
And what was the name of it?
Memory Lane. Memory Lane Music Hall. It was the Gorham Standish line. The place was called Country Crossroads, which I guess was pretty famous for a while. And it's fun, it was a country western place. And they had downstairs in the basement, they had a store. They sold like hats and jeans and everything western. Friday night was singles night. Saturday night was couples night. And they owned it it was a husband and wife. They owned it for like 4 or 5 years. Then they shut down. A church went in there and took over. And the guy that owned the building gave him a break, on the price, lease. And they still didn't pay him. So he ended up having to get rid of him. And then that's how I got involved. He said, talked to him, do you want to take this place over? I said, yeah. So it was a big place. It held I've had almost 500 people in there. So it was a big kind of dance hall. I had some great bands, obviously, because I had some, give you an example, John Waite, he does, I'm Missing You, he played there. Aaron Carter, who just passed away recently, you know what I'm talking about? I had him play there. And that was an experience. All these young girls going, I felt like I had the Beatles there, you know? They're all cheering, waving signs. And I was sad to see that he passed away because at the time, he was on the band, he was on like the bandwagon. And at the end of the night, he was gracious. He took pictures with all my crew and signed autographs for the customers. And so we're taking pictures, and he went behind the bar, and his manager said, "No, you can't have pictures behind the bar, because you know right now you're not supposed to be." And he goes, "I know that I'm not doing it." So he took some pictures, so I have pictures of him there. But then I guess he never followed through because he ended up sad. He's young. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky. I had a lot of good bands. The crowds, it's funny. I had a stand where the DJs played, which towered above the dance floor. And on certain nights, you know, when the place was packed, I'd go up and look, right? And watching people having a good time. And the DJ would say to me, "Geez, you're making some money tonight, Jim." And I'd say, "You know what? I'm not even thinking about that right now. I'm just happy to see this place full. And it makes me feel good that I'm doing something right." You know what I mean? I took pride. So it wasn't about the money all the time, even when I was playing in a band. So.
Now, did you still own that business when COVID hit?
When I what?
When COVID hit?
No, I got out just in time. What happened to us is it's right about when, well, two things. I had done it for 10 years, a lot of hours every day. Now, I loved it. But trouble getting help, young kids, I mean, they would not even show up without calling, right? Or, I'm like, so I remember I started with a rule. I go, hey, because I'm sitting there watching a bartender. She's doing this, and I got, people waiting to get served. So I said to them, I go, listen, leave your phone. I had a little office. Leave your phone out there, Well, then I noticed that every 2 or 3 minutes they come into the office and check their phone. I literally had to make a rule, no phone in the building. Well, what if there's an emergency? I have a phone here, memory lane. Give them the number. Oh, so, but that's how it was. I mean, it got to a point where I had and I always tell the story. I had a girl, she was a nice girl. I mean, she was a good kid. She used to come to the club. She's probably 23. And one day she come in crying. "Jim, can I talk to you?" Yeah. So she comes in and she's telling me that she got laid off from her job. And my rent's due. What am I going to do? And is there anything you can help me with? You got to, I said, Aaron, I really don't need anybody right now, but I really wanted to help her. So I said, well, look, maybe, I can have you come in clean, So I said, can you do Thursday night? Oh, I can't do Thursday night because that's girls' night out. I'm like, all right, we're done. Girls' night out. She's crying to me but that's how it was. They so between that and the law, the DUIs and stuff, all of a sudden the cops were more, I mean, it got worse. Today's bad, but back then it started to get worse. And my customers were getting pulled over. And so I said, you know what? I worried so much about people getting into an accident, So between everything, and I was tired, I said, so I was 60. And I'm like, okay, so now what? I was too young to retire. So I had some money because when I sold the club, I had a little money. So I was able to live off that. I retired at 62. And I did finally get a job. I was working for a company called Smart Transportation. It was a part-time job. I worked 2 days a week. And that was very fulfilling. It was a business where I would pick up people. A lot of them were mentally challenged or physically challenged. And I would pick them up and bring them to their programs, or maybe they had a doctor's appointment. And I did that, and I felt like I was helping out. I got to know these people. It gave me a new appreciation of that. You know what I mean? It's like when I was not working, when I had the cancer, I learned something else. I remember way back, you'd be at the grocery store and you'd see people on food stamps, right? And back then, I guess now they have a card. Back then, it was money. You had to rip it out. And you're sitting there, Jesus, what the hell's this guy? You think of them differently. You think of them, you kind of, Well, guess what? When I got to that point, I said, you know what? All this time, these other people, maybe they had issues like me. I wasn't a bad person. It just, so it gave me a whole different outlook. Well, same thing with these kids, these people. It gave me a whole different outlook. I had some people that were blind. I had people that were in wheelchairs. And I really enjoyed it. Well, then the pandemic hit. And it closed up. And that was, 3 years ago. March 12th, we all got laid off. And he ended up going out of business because a lot of them did, So now I'm 60, I'm 66 years old. Well, another thing I found out, Nick, is that when you're old, people say they don't discriminate, but they do. And I'll give you an example. I'm looking for a job. I was in the car business for 25 years, okay? I went to probably 5 dealerships in the area. And I would call them or send them a resume. Now they don't ask you how old you are. When I was younger and you went for an application, they asked you your age. Well, now they don't. So they look at my resume. Oh, geez, he was a sales manager. Jim, you sound perfect. When can we talk to you? And then I'd go in. Well, we're looking at other people. We'll let you know. They never call me back. It's because, they're looking at a 66-year-old guy, right? And I was there. When I was 30, I was a manager. And if I had a guy that was 60 come in or a guy that was 30, I'm going to go with a guy that's 30, even though he doesn't know as much. I think I'm going to have him longer, maybe. So I never got a job. I couldn't find a job. So it's not. I remember my father got laid off, and he was, I guess, 50 or 55. The Saco Tanning closed. He couldn't find a job. He ended up finding one as a painter. But I remember that stuck in my mind. I go, Jesus, he's a good hard worker, So I don't know. I still wonder what I'm going to. I sit here today and what am I going to do when I grow up? So, but I'm very happy with the life I had. There were things I wish were different. I wish I was a rock star, obviously. But my life is good. I got a good family. I was brought up by a good family. I was very fortunate, I think, to live in this area, go to school in this area. A lot of good people. And I'm so happy to see that Biddeford is on the rise. I mean, it really is. I'm like, I went to the Lincoln Hotel there, and I'm sitting there. I go, geez, are we still in Biddeford? I mean, it's like, what is this place doing? But then I look around. There's other things going on. You have to admit that for years it was like not good. So, I know Biddeford's got some things to work on. All I look is at the physical. I see shops opening up. Main Street, I've never seen it look so good. Right? I mean, well, when we were young it did, but I'm glad to see that these businesses are, sticking around. We got new restaurants opening up. What's that one that used to be the Wonder Bar? The Dun Irish Pub or something like that?
Yeah, Dunbar or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see, that's a good thing because that Wonder Bar was there for years. That used to be a high-class restaurant, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I saw you with Mr. Drugidis. Yep.
On our interview on 207.
Yes,
on the show.
and then I also saw I heard the interview you did with Miss Mantis
Oh, yes.
from Alex Pizza. What I did not know is that they owned Mayflower. I think that's what she said. I'm like, wow. She was always a nice lady.
Betty Spiliopoulos, yes. Very
After high
special
school,
lady.
when we were in high school, Alex Pizza was the place to go. I mean, we'd have high school dances, and that place would be packed. Can you imagine that? All high school kids in that place? Loud, you know. And she would come over. She had a way about it. Okay, now, boys, you know, let's behave now. She had a way of doing it, and everybody respected her and would, okay, sorry, you know. But she was nice. And then Mr. Mantis, her brother, was a teacher. I had him. So I'd see him come into Alex sometimes. He'd go behind, you know, get soda or whatever. I didn't know. I said, what's he doing? Getting there behind there, like he owns the place.
One of the things I want to ask you about is you had an experience that people would not want to have, which is you saw the house where you spent a good part of your life.
Yes. Right across the street from you, Nick.
You saw it burn.
36 State Street. Yep, that's where I lived. And I moved there when I was 14 years old. And I don't know why. I know me and you lived across the street from each other, but for some reason we must have went in different, because we didn't really, no, our parents did, because my mother, you know, oh, she moved in, and she, you know, they seemed to get along all right. But yeah, so I moved there when I was 14. I moved out when I got married. I don't remember when it burnt down now, it's been a while. But it was, you know, years after I moved out. My parents were out of there. And then I didn't know that at first, and I saw it in the news. You know, house burns in Biddeford, right? And I'm watching this on TV, and I did a double take. That looks like my old house. Now, the thing is, it was engulfed, right? But then they said State Street. I'm like, holy mackerel, that's my house. It was weird, because that kind of made me sad. I had a lot of memories in that. So I took a drive over like a couple days later, and it was all cleaned out. No more garage. And they still had the basement, right? So I'm standing and I'm looking down into the basement. And I'm picturing, you know, okay, we had a pool table there. And it hurt, you know. And my mother, she cried. Because that was, you know, my father, all the inside, he did his own. You know, my father was like, he could do anything. Plumbing, electrician. And that's one thing, too, that is changed. Like I said, my father had 11 brothers. Plumber, carpenter, electrician. But like one of the brothers decided he was going to build a house. All his brothers went over and did it with him, right? If my father needed any help with plumbing, he'd call his brother, and they were always helping each other, you know? And I said, man, and when we get together as a family, I noticed that the brothers, you could tell that they loved each other. They would laugh and tell jokes and tell stories. I loved listening to stories. That's why, like my kids, I said, I can't understand, you know, things have changed, you know. I have to get used to all that.
Well, that actually brings me to an interesting segue, which is you've just started doing something quite interesting in terms of having these informal gatherings for people to speak French.
Correct.
What prompted you to do that?
Well, I'm going to tell you that I just hear all the time, as you probably do, back in the 50s and 60s, I don't care where you went in Biddeford, you'd hear French. I'm not lying to you. You'd walk in a store, people were talking French everywhere. I can't remember the last time I went into any stores around here that I heard French. You don't hear it anymore. So, and then I hear all the time from people, I miss speaking French. I wish, I'm losing I was losing it. I mean, as I tried to speak, because I don't talk it, I didn't speak it. Unfortunately, I married a girl that didn't speak French. So guess what? It was English, my kids, I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but what happens is it just loses it. But I was surprised to hear a lot of people, my landlady, out of the blue one day, she said, parle français, she wanted to talk French. She said, I miss speaking French. And I'd hear that every place. A lot of people were losing it. I said, you know what? What if I didn't think it was going to do anything. I said, well, so I went to TJ's Pizza and I talked to them about, because I needed a place. And they were very nice enough to say, yeah, well, if you've been in TJ's, you walk in and there's a separate room there. Well, they never used that room. Well, they let us use that, which was good. And we have it once a month, and I said, so I started putting some word out there. Let's speak French, and, let's have fun. And I put it in Facebook. I didn't really do other than that. And the first one, we had about 10 or 12 people. And we had 4 now. And the one that we had a couple days ago, we have it once a month, last Tuesday of the month. And we had I think we had about 30 people show up. So and then I hear, because see, they go home and tell people, and then, I'll read my comments, because I always post it. Like the next day, I'll have a picture, and let's speak French, and people will make comments. Oh, I'm so glad I'm going to come. So hopefully it'll keep growing, and I'll have to rent a hall. But no, it's worked out well. And then the other thing I really enjoy is I started this thing with our classmates. We meet once a month. Right, we meet at the Lincoln Hotel, which is beautiful. And same kind of deal. That kind of started out with, 8 or 9 people. We started meeting at Elements. It's kind of a small, and of course it doesn't compare to, the Lincoln, which is it's not trying to, but it was bigger, more space. So we started meeting there, and we got more people. And then we all talked about it at the 72 class. Somebody brought up and said, yeah, I was talking to somebody, they graduated in 71, or, and I said, so we brought up, well, what do you think? We want to invite them? So one thing led to another. Now we've got 71, 2, and 3. And the last time, obviously, we had a pretty good turnout. And it's just nice to talk to people, because you go to a 50th anniversary like we had, reunion. Yeah, you talk to people, but you don't. You know what I mean? Hey, Nick, how you doing? Nice to see you. Okay. Because you're so busy running around. So that's kind of why I said, you know what? It'd be nice if we could all sit down and really get to know each other, So one of the things we do, and this is what we do is we have people stand up and say, okay, so what I say to them is, okay, I'll say something like, okay, Nick, you just graduated from high school, 1972. Now what? And then I found out a lot of things about our classmates, I did not know. How military, how many kids they had, what they do for fun. I mean, I would never have got that at this reunion. So we've all learned a little bit more about each other, and, I'm not saying I didn't know them before, but not really. And now, I know these people, we've become good friends, and so hopefully that'll keep growing, We'll see what happens. I saw, I think I told you, Donald Hood. It was great to see him. I mean, he got in a bad accident. And nobody saw him for a long time because he's in rehab. I didn't really recognize him at first, but he's struggling a little bit, but he's made it. So I'm starting to go out, and my heart felt good to see him there. And there were people that, I hadn't seen in a while from 73. We had some people from 71, you know, so who are you again? Okay, you know, but everybody talked and we sat. It's great. So hopefully it'll keep growing. So I've got these two things that's keeping me busy.
And now you've got a third one in mind.
I want to do that. I call it my project. I want to get the music history of Biddeford-Saco area. And I want to acknowledge some of these bands, because when you're in a band, I know what these guys went through. And I know from what I hear from people that people appreciated going out, having fun. And the bands, sometimes they don't, like me, I'm shocked when I hear these people, you know, the compliments they do. Oh yeah, you know, it makes you feel proud. You know, like, geez, they really did appreciate. Well, other bands probably feel the same way. So just some way to acknowledge them, acknowledge some of the places we used to play. You know, then maybe, you know, I wanted the bands to give a little stories. And I'm thinking about putting some sort of booklet together. Get some band pictures. Maybe they give you a little story. And I want to go back as far as I can. You know, I got to do some homework, but, you know, like I was mentioning, I looked at my father's wedding picture and I saw in the back Jimmy Genrin and his orchestra. Never heard of him. So that's in the 50s. So I want to go back. I don't care if it's 1900, Painter's Band. I don't even know if they're still together, but, you know, I want to just dig the history and acknowledge the places that we were fortunate enough to play. And then the other thing, too, is how many events have you been to with a band playing that was for a good cause, right? I can't tell you. We played a lot of times, and we donate, you know, our time. And a lot of bands did the same thing. So I'm thinking to myself, over the course of years, you know, that's a lot of money that these bands help raise, you know. That's a good thing. So I want to acknowledge the bands that have been around and basically a thank you kind of thing, and acknowledge the fact that, yeah, you guys mattered. The places, you know, St. Jean's, St. John's, the Parish Hall, I mean, Country Pines, wherever you go, there's no more. So I just want to come up with, you know, I'm still working on how I'm going to do this, but maybe with your help, you can help me.
Okay, well, this pretty much wraps up what I had planned. I did want to ask, is there anything else that you had thought about that you wanted to make sure to share with people that maybe hasn't come up in the interview?
No, I'm sure when I get home I'll think about it. And I just want to say, if I've forgotten anybody, it's because my memory probably isn't as great as it is, but my biggest fear was forgetting somebody, you know, either family or good friends. So I just want everybody to know I tried my best, and don't take it personally. And Nick, I want to thank you for doing this because I think I told you how important it is for me. And hopefully now my family will be able to, you know, because of you and the program that you're doing, you know, maybe years from now they'll appreciate it. And the history of the family will get passed on, you know? So if we don't do it, it gets lost, just like French speaking. So, but thank you very much. I enjoyed it. It's an honor. And it's good to see you again.
Same here, Jim. Thank you very much.
All right.